Greetings, dear mystery listeners. It is Jamdoodle, live from planet Earth. I'm here on a mountain, in the rain, in my car, as the case may be. I intend to continue to prune my hair while talking to you. And hello, good day. I have been sleeping in my car because I like sleeping in my car. We're here at a campsite. It has been an interesting little ride lately. My lease at my casita that I was renting ended, and I and a friend of mine have been looking for a place to live with her little dog, and in our insistence upon choosing a place that suited our needs, we didn't find one by the time the lease ended, and so we got creative. Strangely enough, I have, well, it's not strange that I have a history of alternative living and van life, car life, but interestingly enough, I have found that it is a way of life that has me feeling more free than a lot of other living situations, because, you know, there's always a trade. There's always a trade in a living situation, and there's energy imbued in the box of a house and the energy of the so-called owners. So I was called to live out of a vehicle at first because I think I was just making a lot of trades for my living situation. I was couch surfing a lot and trading for labor, and I just found that, believe it or not, even though being in a car, you're at the whim of the rules of the road, that even having the tiniest space of a cocoon of my own will and whimsy suits me. So I am looking for a home of my heart's content, and inviting in that home that welcomes me. And until it is properly suited, I will be here. So that's that. It's not really what I came to talk about, so I'm keeping it brief on that matter. Pausing. Anyway, what did I come here to say today? I'm not exactly sure yet. It hasn't been as clear as it has other times, but I do feel a bit like those giant buckets at the water park where they fill up and fill up and fill up, and they're on sort of a swivel swing, and they fill up and then they dump out. There's just certain times when I feel like a jamble is necessary, so I am here now. What do I have on my mind? I am been inclined to talk about something that I've noticed as a quality that I have been imbued with, that I see being a little bit more rare in a lot of people that I meet, or so I'm told, which is a dedication to truth, as that is for me. So that's a good place to start. I was talking to my pa the other day, and he was saying that he said there used to be a day when truth was true. There was a truth. And now it seems like the truth is different for everybody. And I think he was a little bit missing those days when there was a discernible truth. And me being one who often listens and waits for the opportunity to say what is true for me, was thinking to myself, good riddance to those effing days when it was thought that there was one truth. And in my mind, that used to be a much more common way of life in our culture. It was the staunch, and it served a purpose. It was part of our needs at that time, but the staunch grasping to a one truth. Meanwhile, certain peoples always were disenfranchised or undervalued or completely ignored in the fact that that truth wasn't true for them. But it didn't matter, because it was a bit of a safety to have a truth that many people could hold on to in this world of unknowns. And that served us for a long time, and it's quite a different way of being, I reckon, for a lot of people who relied heavily on the truth as something that they could confer with other people, to be willing to entertain the idea that truth isn't as strict as we once thought it was. And in my opinion, that's an absolutely necessary evolution. Entirely, absolutely necessary for us to acknowledge that truth never was and will not be one thing that the truth must contain. If it is true, it is always true. That the truth, if there was such a thing, based on how we conceive of that word, that it must contain everybody's perspective within it, everybody's truth. And we are getting to the point as a culture where, as a society, as a species, where I think that, looking at that little guy behind me in the video, where we're inclined to entertain the idea that just because I don't see it the way that other people see it, or I have something that feels innately and universally true to me, that does not make it so for somebody else, and that too must be true. So it's a hard pill to swallow, perhaps, but it's gonna be a good thing, don't worry, because one day we will be able to share more readily a joint understanding, simultaneous understanding of concepts that will make the distance between one person's truth and another more irrelevant. So it's not as scary as a thing as it may have seemed at one time. But there is a great learning curve in that paradigm, because we must somehow make space, allow space within our awareness for the truth of another being, even if, and meanwhile, our perspective is so very different, seemingly. And that is kind of what I was getting at with a quality that I have harnessed, but was always inclined to do, that may be harder for others, which is the devotion to honesty within myself, and not only as it pertains to what I find to be my opinions on things, but as it pertains to being willing to see inconsistencies and hypocrisy within my own system. And it hasn't always been easy, and I think that's the point that many people get to and turn away from, which is the point where you are met with an idea that brings to light and into question ways that you have been, things that you have thought, ways that you've acted, patterns that you've exhibited, systems that you've utilized. So this is quite vague, but I imagine some people will get the point, which is there have been many moments in my life when I have come face to face with some piece of information that has rendered me foolish, for lack of a better way to put it, that has shown me that I have been narrow-minded or caught up. And I have seen a lot of people get to this juncture and double down, because it makes it's a hard place to get to. It makes you wanna, it brings up such shame. It brings up such faltering. It brings up so much that you almost feel, how could I go on if this is how I've been, if somebody's been seeing me this way, if I didn't see it, or I stood up for these qualities in me. It is at times just an utter devastation of a psyche, of a personality, of a human. And I don't know, for me, I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect in every single time, it's just been quick and easy, but I am so humbled in those moments and so willing to grow and integrate and see myself as previously unknowing, that it has been my deep dedication to allow the transformation that comes from these opportunities that I've been gifted, often in the face of someone else, whether I am good friends with them or it's a stranger, to be checked has been such an honor, and I have been so humbled so many times. And it brings me to a concept I've been thinking a lot lately about, that I've heard just recently repeated back, which was that there's a way to hold, to experience, and could call it ignorance, a naiveness, something that you did that you would do again. It's like the synonym for wrong. Seeing something that isn't the greatest choice, maybe, and not being hard on yourself about it. It is possible to see how you could have acted differently and to not make yourself bad or wrong for that. And that's a huge nugget I've been definitely coming to understand as a person who has historically been very, very hard on themselves, as, self-punishment, societal punishment, self-exile, retribution, guilt, all these subtle ways that I punish myself for all kinds of things. It's come to my attention that I have the opportunity to not do so. That transformation and evolution doesn't require punishment or guilt. I've had the conversation with many people about shame and whether or not shame has value in the system. There's the argument that it is a learning mechanism, that you have to feel some sense of shame in order to really learn a lesson, and I can see both sides. But the point is, I have come to see a way of existing where I am able to learn an important lesson and make a change without inflicting punishment and harm on myself, or seeing it as something that I've done wrong. Now, I could go deep down the common parenting technique, escape, but I don't think I'm going to do that right now. But it is definitely a common thing that we learn from our parents, that we must exhibit, shame, pity, deep sorriness for acting in a way that isn't what is wanted, is needed. And I'm inclined to begin learning lessons without thinking that I've done anything wrong, because ultimately we really are all just here learning. And if I did something that was ill-advised, there's probably a really good reason why I did that. And I believe that we inherently want to get along with each other and treat each other. I mean, deep down, I believe that it's natural to treat those around us that we care about with kindness and consideration. And if there's something that we did that feels like an accident, that you don't have to be punished in order to learn that lesson. It's a deep subject, which is why my mind is reeling. But the point is that in these moments where we are confronted with seeing something that we didn't see before, that maybe we defended in ourselves or the world, that's okay. That it's okay to feel foolish. That it's okay to feel like you didn't know, or that you saw something differently and you've now realized. It's okay to feel embarrassed. And that doesn't mean, I think that is the recoil of it, is just like, oh, what does this mean about me? What does this mean about all the other parts of me? I'm embarrassed to even show up in the world any further because of what this means about what else I might be unknowing. And the devotion to honesty against all odds feels very dear to me personally. It feels so very human and so very needed in a time where things are coming to light that were previously absolutely unbelievable and unfathomable and mind-blowing. So yeah, I don't know how this ties into the next part, which is about where I allow my attention to go, how that affects my physical body, my nervous system, and also possibility. What actually has the option of coming into being based on where I allow my attention. Ooh, a little birdie on the ground. That's very cute. He's like scurrying, not flying. Oh, just flew up like this. This is all such a huge topic. This is a good reason why I would have let it distill a little bit longer, but this can be basically part one, which is acceptance of parts of ourselves. This is kind of what I've been talking about, parts of ourselves that feel or previously felt unlovable, that there is a way, that there is a place for them. There is a place for parts of ourselves that previously felt unlovable. And one could argue that that is really what this whole thing is about, is bringing light, bringing love to parts of experience that have previously been put in darkness, for the liberation of all ideas and all concepts and all ways of being. So, through my experience in life of growing closer and closer to my own self, and the acceptance of all of the parts of myself that I have previously shut out, which is a very common and natural taught behavior, but that through the invitation I've been gifted to accept all parts of myself as I see them and as they arise, that it would inevitably branch out to all people. And if you are willing to look at yourself in the ways that you are, the paradigms and systems that you run in your psyche and existence, then you can see all of those reflected in the world around you, which I've talked about before, as I have been inclined to find and get to know the parts within myself that relate, or that I have, that are connected to the parts that I see in people doing things that I hear about in the world that I completely just am flabbergasted about. I've talked about people that would destroy large portions of the rainforest, which is a place that has deeply impacted me. And I like to say that I can't believe that people would destroy large portions of the rainforest. It's just absolutely unfathomable to me. But I have been inclined to sit with myself and wonder what parts of me can I see that are related to that behavior? What parts of me still are behaving in a predator paradigm, in a victim paradigm, in a destroyer, power-hungry, slave driver paradigm. And until I am willing to truly, truly look at myself and the way that these elements exist in me, then I can't expect anybody else to behave any differently. That's the truth of the matter. I don't even want to try to entertain how somebody could argue at that point, but the fact of the matter is, why does something like that bother me? is because these are unintegrated elements of my own psyche that I don't know how I would deal with was I somebody else in that situation either. And that we are all working with a similar history, a similar context, and the deep and real honesty. And I think some people will hear this story and just be like, why would you ever look for that in yourself? And it's not like I'm trying to call out like these dark parts that don't already exist. It's me realizing that if that is still what we're working with as humanity, then that still exists inside of me. And how can I integrate that? How honest can I be with myself as to the fact that I too have these systems running that I may not be proud of, that I may like to avoid or ignore and sweep under the rug. And I mean, I also, I've been a relentless searcher, picker in the past, and have been guided to a more sort of slow and natural way that doesn't require such aggression in weeding out things that aren't ready to be weeded out. So there's that, and I think that harkens to something about a certain pace, a certain rhythm that is required of evolution, a certain natural pace that must be followed. It just must. It's not even followed, it's must be gone about, because whether or not you try to force something, it's going to go the pace it's going to go no matter what. And in fact, I believe in something around a readiness being indicated by a level of, how can I put this, that sometimes trying to push the matter will make it go slower than if you are willing to allow a natural rhythm and pace that maybe sometimes seems like you're not doing anything. And it comes with a level of trust in subtlety, trust in flow, trust in rhythm. But I have seen myself be a relentless picker and been invited to go slower, to not push my nervous system faster and farther than it is indicating it can go. And that again comes with a brutal, a deep devotion to honesty, that you ask for messages, you ask for cues, and if you're not following the messages that are coming, then I don't know. I think I have a certain responsibility to the honest reflection of that within myself, and a responsibility to adjust my actions based on what I'm hearing. And I think a lot of times that separates me from the world around me. And I have my fair share of pushing. For instance, right now I'm working 40 hours a week at a really physical job, which I love and I've chosen for myself, but I know that that's not my natural rhythm. So I'm willing to admit that and see that for myself. But I'm in conversation, active conversation with myself and the environment and world around me, around how my truth and my actions show up next to the undeniable sense of reciprocity and energy exchange. Meaning, for me, there is a very clear indication of balance that occurs in the world around me, that if I am engaging in harmony and with myself and the world around me, that things go a certain way, things feel a certain way for myself. And if I'm not doing so, if I'm pushing it, if I'm overflowing or undercompensating or whatever, it is very obvious to me. And that doesn't mean that I always will do the best thing, but it's clear to me. So if I am ignoring those signs, then that is my choice in what occurs as a result of that. So that was a sort of side note, but yeah, I mean, it all comes back to an honest reflection, introspection, an honest contemplation, consideration for what you're being shown, for what I'm being shown about myself. Because back to the truth being the only thing that I can really know for myself, and that doesn't mean that I can't be in connection with others, but in my opinion, there's way too much freaking assumption going on and insinuation going on towards other people about what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, what they mean by what they're saying, what they mean by what they're doing, all kinds of things. So much energy, so much attention I see being put from people onto other people about their truth, when all I can speak to in truth, unless I'm going to own a level of projection, is my own experience. My own experience from this vantage point, with certainty, and a lot of times not even with certainty, because there's a lot more unknowns than our culture gives space for. A lot more unknowns. But what I'm putting my attention on and how I'm treating myself and others regarding shoulds, shouldn'ts, perceived certainties, musts, and beyond that, anything. It's like putting your tokens in a game, you know? It's your energy nuggets, your eggs in a basket. It changes everything. Everything, and that's what I've been learning more and more. Everything I learned from trees, nature, you know, people are an extension of that, but so much of what I've come to understand has been by just watching nature and what I've seen from mycelium and lightning, Tesla coils, and electricity is that absolutely everything is interconnected. Absolutely everything. is interconnected. And that means that everything you do, everything you say, everything you think about has a connection to something else. And I used to feel much less like I had any say in what I thought about and what I put my attention on and the things that came out of my mouth. And this is a very deep, complex conversation that's, I'm only just skirting across the surface of, but starting with little shifts in my experience. If I want something to look different and it feels insurmountable, starting with tiny shifts in how I spend my attention tokens in my daily moments ultimately changes everything, and I've seen it change everything. And it's paradoxical, which is another thing that I think I've had the blessing of having to be okay with, is paradox. So much paradox. And the allowance of being okay with paradox has allowed things to shift in ways that I never could have understood, because there's so much logical hindrances in our minds that keep us from believing that certain things can change because it looks like blockage. And it's paradoxical how it's going to work. And it doesn't mean that certain things just disappear. Sometimes it does mean that certain things just disappear, literally. But it doesn't always mean that certain things just disappear. So there has to be a certain level of willingness to have your mind blown and to watch things change. In different ways than you ever would have expected. And a great part of it is staying present with yourself, staying honest, looking at the ripples that are coming back to you, and having an honest reflection, an honest conversation with yourself about what you're seeing, and not making that make you wrong or shut down completely in shame. It's also like you have to let yourself feel the shame. Can't just don't have shame, so just don't. Another way that it's paradoxical. But there is a way through that involves a certain devotion to presence and honesty with yourself about who you are and who you've been, and a certain gentleness about it. That there is nothing wrong or bad about who you are. It all comes from something. So, there's so much depth that I'd like to go into on every single one of those topics, but that's a nice little skim, a Jamble skim, like skim milk, skim Jamble. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm just gonna allow all of the deeper weaves to be illustrated through time and space beyond my words in this moment, and go to sleep soon, because as you can see, I've been yawning. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being mysterious, just like I like it. And yeah. You're allowed to be you. I really wouldn't want it any other way. Even if it doesn't make sense to you or to me right now. It doesn't need to in this moment. Unless it does. You know? Okay. I'll TGYL.